The spaceport of Velarath Prime smelled of ozone and alien spice, a combination that still made Mara Ellison's nose wrinkle after 3 years of deep space travel. She pulled her jacket tighter and stepped off the boarding ramp onto the polished obsidian floor of the terminal. The jacket was the problem, apparently. It was old by any standard. A military-grade Earth field jacket, olive drab, with a worn patch on the left shoulder that read United Earth Defense Corps in faded lettering. The seams had been repaired twice. The right pocket had a small burn mark from an incident she rarely discussed. The collar had lost its stiffness years ago. It hung on her lean frame like something that had been through war and come out the other side. Which, to be fair, it had. She hadn't gone 10 steps before the whispers started. What is that fabric? Primitive. Clearly primitive. Is that stitching? By hand? A group of Valori merchants, draped in bioluminescent fiber silk that shifted colors with their moods, had stopped to stare. Their current color was a contemptuous yellow. Mara had learned enough Valori body language to read that clearly. One of them, tall, with the characteristic triple-ridged forehead of high-caste Valori, stepped forward. His translator bead glowed as he spoke. Human. Is that garment standard issue for your kind? A pause, heavy with amusement. It looks as though it survived several catastrophes. His companions rippled with laughter, their silk shifting to bright amused orange. Mara glanced down at her jacket. Then back up at them. It did, she said simply, and kept walking. She had a cargo manifest to file. She didn't have time for this. But Velarath Prime's spaceport was vast, and the mockery followed her in waves. At the currency exchange, a Drenithy clerk looked at her jacket and then looked away, as though the sight embarrassed him on her behalf. At the transit desk, a Keth administrator made a comment in her own language, not bothering to lower her voice, and her colleague responded with a sound that needed no translation. Mara filed her paperwork. She did not explain herself. She had long since stopped explaining herself. She was waiting for her cargo clearance near Terminal 7 when the crowd shifted. It started as a ripple, the particular kind of movement that happens when something very powerful enters a room. Conversations dropped. Bodies stepped aside. The ambient noise of the spaceport dimmed, not from any instruction, but from the instinctive response of species who had learned, across generations, when to go quiet. General Kale Veron walked like a man who had fought on 17 worlds and buried soldiers on most of them. He was Draknari, nearly 7 feet tall, with the charcoal-gray scaled skin and deep amber eyes of his kind. His rank insignia was minimal but unmistakable, a single vertical bar of hammered stellite on each pauldron, the mark of a supreme commander of the hegemony combined forces. He wore no ceremonial armor. No entourage of aides. He moved through the terminal with 2 junior officers trailing at a respectful distance, and even they seemed to understand that he needed no protection. The Valori merchants fell utterly silent. Their silk turned a pale, instinctive white, the color of deference. General Kale Veron was halfway across the terminal when he stopped. He had seen the jacket. His amber eyes fixed on it. Fixed on her. Mara Ellison stood with her cargo slate in one hand, completely still, meeting his gaze the way she met most things, directly, without performance. The general changed course. The crowd parted before him like water. He walked to her, and when he was close enough that she had to look up to meet his eyes, he stopped. He studied the jacket, the patch, the burn mark, the repaired seams, with an expression that was not contempt. It was something older and more complicated than that. United Earth Defense Corps, he said. His translator rendered it in perfect standard, but she could hear the care he took with each word. 7th engagement. The Oleron Corridor. Mara's chin came up slightly. You know about the corridor. I commanded the hegemony relief forces that arrived on the 3rd day. His voice was low and very steady. We were 6 hours too late. By the time we reached the defensive perimeter, he paused. The humans had already held it. 412 soldiers. Against a Sketh assault force of 9,000. The terminal had gone absolutely silent. The Valori merchants had not moved. The Drenethi clerk had come out from behind his counter without realizing it. 412 held for 71 hours, General Kale Veyron continued, until relief could be organized. They did not retreat. They did not fracture. They held. His amber eyes moved from the jacket back to her face. I have studied that engagement for 3 years. It is taught at the Hegemony War Academy as the definitive example of sustained human endurance under catastrophic attrition. A pause. I did not expect to find a survivor of it in a spaceport transit terminal. Mara was quiet for a moment. There aren't many of us. No, he agreed. There are not. He reached up, slowly, deliberately, and placed one massive hand over the center of his chest. The Draknari salute, not the snapping military version, but the old gesture. The one that meant I see what you carried. I know what it cost. The hegemony owes a debt to the 7th engagement that we have not yet found words adequate to express, General Kale Veyron said. If the corridor had fallen, the Sketh advance would have reached the Pulhari colonies within 6 months. The civilian death toll would have been, he stopped. We do not speak those numbers aloud. It is considered indecent, given what it cost others to prevent them. Mara looked at him for a long moment. She thought about the 71 hours. She thought about the cold, and the noise, and the names she still said in the dark on bad nights, people whose families had received folded flags, and the carefully worded letter that the United Earth Defense Corps regrets to inform you. The jacket was Sergeant Yuen's, she said finally. Her voice was even. She gave it to me on hour 63, when mine was too damaged to insulate. She said she didn't need it anymore. A beat. She was right. She didn't. General Kale Veyron did not look away. He did not offer condolences, which she appreciated. He simply nodded, once, with the gravity of someone who understood exactly what she had just said. Then the jacket has been in a battle, he said. It has a right to look like it. He turned, not sharply, not with drama, and let his amber gaze travel across the assembled crowd. The Valori merchants. The Drenethi clerk. The dozens of travelers who had stopped to watch. His expression communicated nothing so crude as anger. It was simply the look of a man with the weight of 17 campaigns behind him, who had something to say and intended it to land. This human, he said, loud enough that every translator bead in the terminal would carry it, held a position that protected 11 inhabited systems. She wore this jacket through 71 hours of continuous combat against odds that no strategic model suggested were survivable. She is standing in this terminal today because she is, by any measurable standard, extraordinarily difficult to kill. He paused. You would do well to remember that the next time you consider what a garment tells you about a species. The silence that followed was the loudest Mara had heard since the corridor. General Kale Veyron looked back at her. Something that might have been the Draknari equivalent of a wry expression moved across his angular features. I would be honored, he said, if you would allow me to buy you a drink while you wait for your cargo clearance. I have questions about the corridor that the after-action reports never answered. Mara Ellison looked down at her jacket. At the faded patch, and the repaired seams, and the small burn mark on the right pocket from a plasma bolt that had come just close enough. She looked back up at General Kale Veyron. Yeah, she said. All right. She tucked her cargo slate under her arm and fell into step beside him, the worn olive jacket catching the spaceport light, not gleaming, not ceremonial, not impressive by anyone's decorative standard. Just real. Just earned. Just hers. The crowd parted for both of them. End.